nothing you hear, and only one half that you see.
We recently moved into a big house in a small village near the city. The house had 2 floors, and the rooms were downstairs and the living area upstairs. At the living room we had this 10-meter long balcony door that you could see all the way to the city, as we were the first house of the village. So one night, around 7 p.m, I was sitting with my mum watching TV on the couch. My father was taking my 2 sisters to gymnastics practice. I like to watch the cars leaving towards the city and disappearing into the distance, so that's what I did with my father's car. After a while, I turned again towards the TV. A few minutes passed by, and I clearly heard my little sister giggling loudly from downstairs. I was horrified, as I had just saw my sisters getting into the car and leaving with my father. However, the TV was loud, and I reassured myself that it was a sound from the TV probably. Then I see my mum standing up and reaching for the TV remote, and she asked me if I heard my sister giggling. I told her that I did, and together we went towards the stairs. Then my mum called my sister twice with no reply. We stood there for 10 seconds, and everything was quiet. All of a sudden, we both hear my father screaming, "Hey!" My mum ran to the kitchen and called my father and asked him where they were. He replied that they just arrived at the city. My mum then grabbed a golf club, and together we went downstairs, as we thought it was probably a robber taunting us. We searched every inch of the house, inside wardrobes and under beds. No one was there. This happened in the middle of winter, and all the windows were closed, so this wasn't someone from outside. So, you know those stories where the kid hears stuff that's not there, and everyone thinks it's just a wild imagination? Yeah, well, that was my life. Except it wasn't my imagination. It was real. Too real. We moved to an old house when I was about 12, the kind that screams for a paint job. At first it was cool, big enough to have my own space. But then, the place started messing with us. Mainly with me. Mum and Dad were out a lot, working shift jobs, you know. It cued whatever it was in our house to start its party. I'd be gaming in my room and I'd hear my dad call,
"Ben, let the dog out,"
from downstairs. Only thing, we didn't have a dog. And Dad wasn't home. Or late at night, I'd wake up to my little sister, Ellie, crying out. Man, the first few times I nearly tripped over myself rushing to check on her. She was always dead asleep, sleeping like a baby, not a single sign of distress. As the years passed by, it became background noise. Mum asking for help with the groceries, my sister calling out to me in the night. Echoes of our daily life, but off, like a scratched CD. My friends didn't like the feel of the house. A few came once and never came back. They'd hear their laughs, their own voices, while they were playing video games silently. They thought we were pranking them, like my whole family was in on it together. We weren't. We sort of just lived with it, until this one night before my 18th birthday changed everything. The folks were at some dinner, and outside one hell of a storm was brewing. Thunder, lightning, the works. Then it started. The freak show. Shouts, cries, whispers, all downstairs. Full-on family drama, but in surround sound. And let me say, we're not like that at all. That was it, the final straw. Once the storm calmed and the house went quiet, it felt like the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting for something to pop. We couldn't do it anymore. A few weeks later, the moving trucks were outside. The old house didn't make a peep that day. We drove off, and I swear I saw the curtains twitch, like it was saying goodbye or maybe just messing with me one last time. Years later, I asked my parents about it, why we suddenly moved out, and they told me they were experiencing the same things as I was, but they didn't want to add to my fear, so they played it off like it was my imagination. So there you go, my life, aged 12 to 18, featuring ghostly surround sound. One thing's for sure, it was a childhood I'll never forget. I'm no storyteller, and I tend to keep to myself, but what my family and I went through this summer, well, it's not really something you just keep inside. We're just your average family of 4. My husband, Carter, our 2 kids, Lily and Nolan, and myself. We decided to rent an old cabin in the woods, something rustic, to get away from the city buzz. The first couple of days were picture perfect. You'd almost expect a fairy tale to unfold in that charming clearing. Then, the fairy tale twisted. We started hearing things. It began with the kids. Lily came up to me one morning at breakfast, confusion lacing her small face. "Why are you whispering my name, Mummy?" But I hadn't called her. I put it down to kids playing tricks on each other. Until I kept hearing Carter call out to me. It's eerie hearing your name spoken in your husband's voice, coming from the shadowed tree line when he's right beside you, chopping wood. It scratches at your nerves. "That wasn't me," he said, but his eyes were clouded with concern. He didn't have to tell me. I could see he heard it too. Things got weirder fast. Laughter echoed around us in the evening. Laughter that mimicked my children's laughter, down to the last giggle. But they'd be sitting there, quiet, fear in their eyes, huddled by the fire. I'd catch murmurs, my own voice discussing plans, day-to-day things, when I hadn't said a word. It was as if the forest around us listened, learned, and then tossed our own names back to tease us or taunt us. We secured the doors. We stayed close. But the voices, our voices, crept under the doors and through the walls at all hours. I was no longer certain if Carter's calls for help were from him or from something else. Nolan, my brave little man, tried to rationalize it. He said it was just echoes, reflections, or someone playing a nasty joke. But there's only so much you can explain away when the voice of your daughter pleading for help pulls you out into the dark night. And she's not there. She's inside, asleep and safe. Our nerves were frayed at the edges. By the time we heard an angry shouting match erupt between Carter and myself in the yard, while we were both inside, silent and sipping tea, the decision was made. The kids were terrified. Carter was on edge, and I couldn't handle the forest speaking back anymore. We packed in haste, abandoning the fairy tale for safety of the familiar. Our car pulled away, leaving behind the whispers and cries that sounded all too human, all too much like the family we knew ourselves to be. I don't know what to make of it all. I don't even have a name for it. But something in those woods knows us too well. We came back home sooner than expected, to the mundane sounds of city life, thankful for every honking car and yelling neighbor. Whatever it is, doesn't seem to have followed us, except in our minds, where it still echoes. Thanks for listening. Maybe someone else has had a similar experience and can share what they think it is. Hey there. Never thought I'd be writing something like this, but here we are. My name's Mike, and my partner, Jenna, and I moved into a duplex earlier this year. You always hope the move comes with an upgrade in life, don't you? But what we got wasn't listed in the brochure. We loved the place at first glance, a proper home with those small quirks that scream potential. But not long after settling in, that potential turned peculiar. It began subtly. Jenna's got this melody she hums when she's busy around the house. It's a nice tune. I have no idea what it is, but it always made the place feel more alive. One evening, I'm down in our little DIY basement workshop, and I hear Jenna's humming from upstairs. Figured she was home early from her friend's place, so I drop my tools and head up for the usual welcome back chat. And what do I find? A quiet, empty house. No Jenna. Her car not in the drive. Nothing. I ring her up and sure enough, she's still across town, and no, she wasn't in the house humming that tune. Odd, right? Well, that was just the prelude. The next event really shook us. I wake up one night to the sound of Jenna talking in the living room, clear, as if she was sitting right there on the sofa. I'm thinking she's on the phone, maybe walking around to talk. But that doesn't sit right because it's past midnight. I get out of bed, walk into the living room. No Jenna, no phone call. Just the dark and the silence that fills it as soon as I switch on the light. Now, I'm not superstitious. I don't really put much thought into the paranormal. But I tell you, my skin was prickling. Jenna wakes up to find me all pale, wandering the house. I explain it to her, and she's all rational about it, suggesting maybe I dreamed it up, half asleep and all. I almost buy it. Until it happened to her as well. One afternoon I'm out for groceries, and Jenna hears me calling out to her from the bedroom, asking for help with fixing something. It spooked her good because she had just texted me and knew I was out and about. She checks the bedroom, and of course, it's empty. That's when we start piecing it together. Something around here is mimicking us, and is damn good at it. It's not threatening, you see, but it's invasive, like a violation of our private selves. It went on. My whistling, her singing, even snippets of our own conversations whispered back to us in the dead of night. We've heard of hauntings, but this is something else. We reached out to the landlord, tried to dig a bit into the history of this duplex. All he could give us was a shrug and a sorry, a story about tenants who left too fast, and nothing to explain why. We were left with a choice: keep living in this echo chamber or bail. But we're not quitters and we're not victims. We stand our ground, our own skepticism as our shield. So that's our story. We joke now that at least we're never really alone, even when we are. But we have an unspoken agreement. When we hear each other without seeing, we don't follow the sound. I've done some searching online and I found the topic of mimics. Could this possibly be a mimic? And if so, are we in danger? Let me know. So this happened to me last September, and is one of the scariest events in my life so far. It is also why I will always choose to not stay at anyone else's place anymore, even if that means I need to pay for my own Uber. It was a warmish night. We had gone out to celebrate Becca's 22nd birthday. After a great night out at a club and a few too many shots, we all decided to call it a night. Being the person who lived the farthest, and also the person who drank the most, it was decided that I should crash at Becca's place on the couch. I don't remember the ride there, or walking into her apartment. All I remember is collapsing onto Becca's couch with all the grace of a fallen tree. My head was spinning so fast I could swear I was on a merry-go-round. Becca tossed me a blanket, making a comment about it being cloud soft or something, but I barely felt it. Becca murmured her good night, her voice fading as she retreated to her bedroom. I just lay there, slowly succumbing to sleep. It wasn't long before the stillness of the house began to stir again. Only this wasn't the familiar shuffle of my friend returning to fetch a forgotten phone. It was a creeping whisper, slithering out of the dark, dressed in the tones of my friend.
Hey Laurie, come here. You gotta see this.
The voice taunted from the dark hallway. I squinted into the dark. Becca, that you? My voice was a distorted record, slow and wary. But there was no reply. I glanced at my phone and the time said 3:07 a.m. Something about that time made the darkness somehow feel alive. I texted Becca, a lazy reassurance to my unease. You okay? Her reply was swift. In bed. What's up? I replied, nothing, and just tried to dismiss the incident, trying once again to let sleep take me. Yet, as the silence settled like dust, I spotted it. A figure, barely visible. A smudge in the darkness that could have been Becca. But it quivered oddly, like a glitch in reality. I rubbed my eyes to look again, thinking maybe something was stuck in them. And it was gone. Then I heard it.
Laurie, you okay?
It said my name. I could have sworn it was Becca's voice. Was I hearing things? It then repeated.
Laurie, you okay?
But this time, it sounded like it was at the front door. Again, I whispered into the darkness, Becca? And added, this isn't funny. All the while looking around me to see if I could see anything else. Then, this isn't funny, could be heard from the kitchen, the entrance of which was directly across from my feet. Again, it was Becca's voice. But how did she get from the front door to the kitchen so fast, without me seeing or feeling her past me? I was statue still, a scream in my throat that I just couldn't let out. It felt like forever that I lay there frozen like that. I guess I must have passed out eventually, because next thing I knew, sunlight was streaming in through the gaps in the curtains. It was morning. The sunlight, although it hurt my eyes, was reassuring. I quickly gathered up my things and got ready to leave. I didn't want to spend another minute there. I woke Becca up and told her I needed to leave. I made up some half-assed excuse about my family needed me for something that day. She called me an Uber and sat and waited with me until I was picked up. I didn't tell her about my experience. I wasn't ready to relive it yet, and my hangover made it hard to formulate the words. I told her the full story later that day after I had recovered somewhat. She was shocked and said she had never had anything like that happen in her apartment before, but she had only been there barely a month. I have no idea what that was, and I truly hope my friend never experiences it. One thing's for sure though, I will never crash at a friend's place again. This happened when I was in high school. I don't exactly remember how old I was, but I know I was a teenager. I am part of a family of 9. Yeah, it's a big family. We lived together in a detached house at the time. I don't really know how to cut to the chase in any other way other than saying, in a family that size, it's inevitable that there is a queue sometimes for the bathroom in the morning. 7 a.m. in my house was like Shinjuku Station during rush hour sometimes. It was always busy, but we lived with it. It was just our lifestyle. One night during dinner, my mum said something a little strange. She said that morning the light in the bathroom was on and she needed to use it. So she called out to see if anyone was in there, and someone replied, yeah. My mum said that she wasn't sure if it was my younger brother or my little sister, so she called out both of their names to see if she could find out. She waited a while, but no one replied. She said that she was a little concerned by that silence, so she went to unlock the door. When she opened the door, she said that she couldn't believe her eyes. The bathroom was empty. No one was in there, but she said she was adamant that she heard one of our voices coming from the bathroom. I wasn't surprised when she told me she got the chills after that experience. Of course, my dad shook it off and said that she must have been imagining or hearing things. I guessed that that could be a possibility. We lived in a noisy home, and when it was quiet sometimes, it just didn't sound or feel right. I suppose that sounds a little weird, but it's true. Some of my siblings agreed with my dad. They said that it could have been street noise, the neighbor's dog, or the TV being on in another room. I allowed them to sway me, and I changed my mind. And then, after a couple of days, I kind of forgot about it. One morning, a little while later, I was getting ready to go to school, and I needed the bathroom. It was just a standard morning in the family of 9. I saw the light on in the bathroom, so I called out, "Is someone in there?" or something like that. Then, alongside the noise of a newspaper being unrolled, I hear my father's voice say, I thought to myself, why are you reading a goddamn paper in there? You know how busy it is in the morning. So I rattled the door handle and told him to hurry up. However, when I rattled the door, it slowly opened. It wasn't locked. The door opened to reveal an empty bathroom. I was really creeped out by that sight. I was freaking out because I could have sworn that I heard my dad in there. I feel as if I could pass a lie detector on that too, because in my mind, it was so clear. I was certain that he was in there. Only, he wasn't. I don't know what to do, so I quickly left the house. I didn't want to use the bathroom at home that day, and I decided to use the one at school. I couldn't believe the same thing that happened to my mum happened to me. I'm sure I was not hearing things. I'm sure it wasn't street noise or the TV. And I know it wasn't the neighbor's dog making that noise. Later that night, while we were all having dinner, I mentioned what happened that morning to my family. My sister was the most shocked, because she said that she had heard my father's voice in the bathroom directly after I left for school. That just freaked me out even more. It was seriously weird. There was something in our house that was trying to mimic the voices of my family members by the sound of things. I don't know how else to explain it. It happened on a bright morning in a family home that had had no history, as far as I know, of paranormal activity. It really creeped me out, and I don't know what that was. I still live at home, but I will be looking to move out as soon as I can. I have heard voices in the night coming from across the hall that sound like my siblings talking in quiet conversations, and sometimes I can't get to sleep because I don't know if I am listening to my brothers and sisters muttering at night, or if it's something else. Hello watchers and listeners, thank you so much for watching. If you have a story to share, please send it to my email in the description below. This channel is mostly made up of stories sent in by viewers or people they know. Another way to support the channel is to sign up for my Patreon, where you can watch my videos ad-free. More perks will be added in the new year. Also, I will be adding new designs to the merch store, so keep an eye out for that. Thank you all for your continuous support. And remember,
Papa loves you.